It's definitely an issue which people seem to be, they're conflicted on. I mean, from your experiences, what have you understood that feminism actually is?
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, feminism is hard to define, in my opinion.
Definitely. Yeah.
It depends on an individual's interpretation of it. To me, if you want to ask me what feminism, I think feminism is all about upholding the rights of women, ensuring that they're equal in society, in the environment we live in, etc. And obviously not abusing anyone. I mean, let alone women. And that makes, I guess, I'm a feminism. I believe in feminism, and I'm a feminist, if that's the word, not a feminism, obviously. But yeah, because that's common sense, really. I don't quite understand the groups and what their aims and objectives are.
I think when it comes to feminism, we really have to understand where this movement is coming from and actually speak to the people who are part of this movement and listen to their concerns. So recently when I was at uni, I got to know a few of these Islamic sisters who call themselves feminists. And so I asked, what kind of feminist though? Because if it's the liberal kind, that's something. If there's like Islamic feminism.
How many definitions have you come across?
Various. What I'm trying to say is, rather than focus on the label of feminism, I think if we look at the problem, it's much more beneficial. So when I would sit down with them and they would tell me their grievances and their arguments, and I really tried to listen and understand and challenge my own convictions. At one point, I remember I went home and I stayed awake until 1 a.m. just contemplating over the arguments and realizing that this is something that I haven't realized in my life before, that I haven't thought about, because I've always been in a place of privilege, right?
Yeah,
and I think that's something we don't take into consideration very often, that as males, we grew up and are still in a position of privilege, and women, I would venture to say, have probably been the most oppressed group of people in history.
And all over the world, actually. And
so do you find that regardless of how they define themselves and what the definitions are, that the causes are all common?
No, I think we should. I think when it comes to certain aspects of feminism, for example, a woman going outside into the street and stripping naked because she sees that that's her right, for example. So again, female, for example, I think we have to be critical against that without being critical against the movement that's trying to gain an equal place in society, or a place in society by the right of the woman.
Have some of these movements made life harder for men?
Have some of these movements made life harder?
In any single way? So has it kind of affected the role of men in society? Has it shaped the way we think?
Well, it can certainly confuse us, man. I mean, the brother's obviously given an example of this organization where women went out and stripped naked. I mean, that's illegal. But you can't do that.
But I
on
mean,
the
from a
streets
perspective
anyway.
of how a man is expected to be that. For example, how a man's supposed to be a gentleman, opening the doors, putting the chair out.
Yeah, I mean, I think we as men generally have gone down in chivalry, and I don't know what the actual root cause of that is. And that's always a good thing. I mean, we have to treat our mothers, sisters, wives, and even women out on the streets with respect.
I think even having this conversation for us, to even say that, is questionable for us to even talk about this, because this issue, for many women think that men shouldn't even be involved in the issue, because we're not supposed to.
Because it's men who have gone through years of oppression.
Sure, so they should be the ones to talk about this. So they should fight for women's rights. We don't need you necessarily to protect us. Now, although I understand the sentiment there, I do feel that as the brothers, we should be involved, because ultimately this is a man's problem. And when I say man's problem, I mean men are the ones who oppress the women. So we need to tackle that.
But would you not say there's no oppression that happens to men as a result of feminism?
No, there is an oppression that happens to men as well. Again, but we can't paint it with one brush over all of it. So the type of feminism that equates a woman to be superior to the man, that's going against the principles of equality.
So can you give any examples of what men have gone through? I mean, not to not to take it away from women, because at the end of the day we want to understand and appreciate
there are movements like Meninists.
Yeah.
These things exist.
Is that real?
Yeah, that's
wow,
real.
I've never heard
and
that before.
no, but that's sad, because you can't equate the oppression of men to the oppression of women throughout history
Definitely,
in
yeah, I
society.
agree. Yeah.
So that in itself, you see, we can't make it out like we are the victims or the oppressed ones. Let's take one problem at a time.
Yeah.
And when it comes to this problem of the issue of the oppression of women, who, and by the way, this came out after World War II, when when women were really abused in society, and in the way that their roles were taken advantage of after the war. So this was a movement. It's been hijacked by various other movements, but initially the movement that initiated this, the principles that initiated this movement, rather, the principles should stay alive, and we should together work towards. At the end of the day, Islam says you should side with the oppressed against the oppressor. But again, I'm not talking about liberal feminism. That's something completely different.
So we recognize that as human beings, as men who are Muslim, we follow a religion that tells you not to oppress anyone, and we recognize that women in general have been oppressed, right? So when it comes to, you mentioned liberal feminism, yeah? So what kind of feminism is actually compatible with Islam, if that's the question to ask?
First of all, there's a book by Saba Mahmood which critiques liberal feminism, which I would recommend people to read. But if we want to bring it,
what does that even mean, liberal feminism? What's different from that, to what's Islamically acceptable?
What's Islamically acceptable?
Yeah.
To answer the question about what correlates between how does Islam and feminism, how do they correlate together? Some feminists would argue that the roles that are told to women and men are told to them from a young age, and it's society that makes them that way.
The culture.
And so so these attributes that men have, this masculinity and femininity, is really not true. It's not inherent. That society is what brings that into them. Now, certain even Muslim sisters and brothers who are feminists may even believe that. This is where the issue becomes questionable. This is where there's a crossroads, where someone would have to make a decision now, because Islam clearly states that there are gender roles. Gender roles do exist. There is a role for the man,
definitely,
and there is a role for the woman. There are clothes for the man, and there are clothes for the woman. And there are ways in which a man should conduct himself, and there are ways in which a woman should conduct herself in the Islamic tradition. Now, if you don't believe in the Islamic tradition, then my conversation is not with you. But if you believe in the Islamic tradition and you want to champion feminism, then you have to approach this epistemologically, which means which source of knowledge do you value most? Which pathway are you going to value the most? So, in Islam, a man, for example, is the manifestation of Allah's strength and Allah's absoluteness. That's the man. Let's just say of those names.
You find some feminists who would look at that and be like, that's just...
No, like that, they'll say that's not true. Whereas a woman manifests Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's beauty and infinity, right? And there are various different names that they manifest in different ways, and better than the other. It's not one is better than the other, but one manifests certain names better than the other one. So the woman, if I was to say the woman has more compassion than the man, and kindness, and would you believe that certain women would be offended from that? As in, why am I the kind one, and the compassionate one, and the soft one, and the man has to be the strong, hard one? Why? Whereas, if you look at the names that are manifested, certain names dictate the roles. Now, when you tell me what those roles are, if you ask me what are, that's where we have to really sit down and think and research, because we can't generalize and say a man has to be like that and a woman has to be like that. We know that there are roles, and that is a step in itself. To prove that there are roles set is a step in itself. For someone to accept that, for a feminist to accept that, is difficult, but it's there. For certain types of feminists, others might not find it difficult. But now, what are those roles? This takes a lot of diligence. The answers, I believe, are in our tradition. It is in Islam. It can offer the answers.
I mean, before we go any further, Brother Ali Hassan, I'm just wondering, earlier you mentioned comments about how you agree with the movement. Do you think it's had any effect on your life and your interaction with different females who you've come across? How much of what Brother Hussein is saying would you agree with?
No, I understand exactly where Brother Hussein is coming from, and it has impacted me. I'm sure it has. Obviously, in my upbringing, I've been, exposed to such movements. And the way that I believe it's impacted me is I'm more careful what I do and what I say around women, which I think is a good thing. It just makes me rethink of what I'm going to say and do. Not that I was going to say anything bad to begin with, but sometimes I do feel a bit nervous. Like if there's many women who classify themselves as feminists, I'm like, oh well, do I actually belong
like
in this group?
Exactly,
I'm on the offensive, and I get a bit confused. Like, what am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to be here? And I don't like that feeling. I just want to be normal. I just want to be. Look, I'm.
So do you think it challenges our masculinity?
It does. I think it does, and especially groups that have a variation of the word feminism, and they're going towards the extreme part of feminism. That's going to have a greater impact on us and our masculinity.
So that challenge, is it something that is an insecurity on our behalf, or is it something that's a problem within men?
I think it's making us insecure. It's making men insecure.
Should it be making us insecure? People are supposed to be following
nothing
the
should
Imams
make you
of the Ahlul Bayt.
insecure. Sorry, what was that last bit?
As people are supposed to have the role models that Imam Ali, the Holy Prophet.
Yeah.
Should we be put in a place where such things make us insecure?
No, of course not. We, again, like you said, the role models are there. We should learn from them. I know there's many traditions where Imam Ali, the reason I'm bringing this particular one up because I'm going back to the cultural aspect. I belong to a Pakistani culture, and I know that the men are always masculine.
I believe our roles are dictated in a way. When I say roles, I mean a certain pathway that we should take. Like gender, there's male and female. I don't believe in the genderless theory that people are going about saying these days, where a child can choose what they want to become. I don't agree with that. Even if you look biologically, forgive me for saying this example, but let's just take religion out of the picture and look at this scientifically and biologically. If you want to say the universe, how the universe created man, and if you look at the sexual organs of the man and the woman, and you see how they're so different and they represent
even on that level it's different,
an esoteric reality, as in the man is the one who is the outer and the exoteric, and who, if you want to say, inserts himself into the world, and he has to go get, and he is the breadwinner, and he comes home, and the woman is attracted to this.
That's a whole way of looking at it.
Is that agreement or disagreement?
Let me just finish this.
I'm going to listen to it.
And because they want to stop me there. And the woman biologically is attracted to that man that goes out there and comes back. But the man, he's out there, he needs a home to go into, otherwise he is lost. And the woman is the esoteric, the inner, who allows the man in and gives him peace, and she is the inner aspect and he is the outer aspect, and this is the yin and yang, if you want to call it. Like, there's a book called The Tao of Islam by Sashiko Murata, and she talks a lot about the gender roles of man and woman in the Islamic tradition as well. I just thought, biologically speaking, this exists, you know what I mean? But what's happening these days is the woman is more becoming the exoteric, the outer, in the extreme manifestation of feminism, which I mentioned. And the man is becoming the esoteric and the inner. And a woman isn't attracted to a man like this. And a man is not attracted to the woman that goes out very much. And this is me personally speaking, and I found that in various other men, in that they don't find attraction to that woman who, if I were to say this sentence, acts like a man. And likewise, the man who acts like a woman. And I think really, if we are honest with ourselves and we ask ourselves that question, that would you be attracted to someone who acts this way or that way, I would venture to say no.
I'll tell you right now, no, that makes complete sense to me. And I have noticed myself that
but
men are becoming a bit more...
This is just body. This is just, our bodies are telling us.
It changes your thought as well.
You know what I mean?
Guys, we're going really deep, but unfortunately, that's